recording shortly after it's done, pretty much unredacted. And we're going to put it on YouTube so individuals can share it with their peers and others that they know. So with that, John, if you're prepared, can we start?
I want to welcome everyone to today's Big Data Revealed product demo. We'll be discussing our three main products. The first is our BDR 360 compliant for the enterprise, which is designed to deliver complete data protection impact assessments going through every row of your database, no matter its size. It'll encrypt personal information discovered and build comprehensive metadata catalogs, which are needed to support the right of erasure and right of information. Our second product is our BDR e-commerce Proxy. And what this does is it allows your company to use encrypted data with virtually zero website or application changes. Conceptually, it sits between the server and the application and encrypts and decrypts each call to the database in secured memory and then delivers the data back to the database. It also manages your encryption keys to protect you from things like buffer overflow attacks and SQL injection attacks. The final topic today will be about the BDR consent module, which allows customers to consent to the right of information or right of erasure process when they make those requests. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve.
Well, Dr. Horn, thank you. I appreciate that. And what we're going to do is start out with where CCPA and GDPR really begins, and it's where companies do need to begin and where it's recommended to begin, and that is the identification excuse me, of your exposed PII or personally identifiable information. Now, what we have built in are two sets of processes. We can use JDBC and go against Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, Teradata, MySQL, Postgres, shortly MongoDB, other non-SQL databases, Teradata if I didn't mention it. So we have a whole slew of databases that we go against, and we did start out going against Hadoop's HDFS, which exponentially is quicker than most. And there are different methodologies people might want to use because there's more talk about companies going against structured data only or production data, but there are PDF files, there are Office docs, there are OCR docs, there are biometrics, facial rec, object recognition type documents. So we have built in a system to where you don't have to rekeying in existing database type information, and if you're going to use TCP/IP over SSH or SSL, we have all those capabilities built in here for you. So here we're going to take an example, and we're going to go into a database that's existing. We're going to test it. We made our connection. We're going to go into test data 2 as an example. Now, instead of just going out and finding and creating some basic metadata, we create extensive comprehensive metadata down to the columns and rows to where we find PII. But we also let you remediate. You can remediate on the fly. You can remediate later with your ETL tools. You can put the remediated data in HDFS and S3 or in your existing database. You have your choice and combinations as you see here. So in this example, I am going to go and I can create a new schema for HDFS in a database, or if I'm running in a small table, I might want to do the encryption and update directly to a database, which is almost unheard of, by being able to find the PII and do the encryption directly. So I'm actually going to show you an example here where we're going against the schema in a database, Steve1, and I'm going to go to emails, and I'm also going to look for a person named Jenkins because they didn't want their last name being used. So I could do a complete erasure or an encryption. There's a big debate out there in CCPA and in GDPR of what allows you to really do an erasure. Do you need something stamped from the court, from FedEx Kingos, from a bank? What type of validation really allows you to do that? Because people can't be doing that unethically or unprofessionally. So here I'm going to go through and I'm actually going to go out real time and I'm going to look for emails and I'm going to encrypt and store it directly back into the database as one example. Another example I'll show you is I'll write it to HDFS for the data scientists and they can get access to the encryption keys and the DBAs will have their databases updated directly, or they can get a copy of it with a timestamp and use their ETL team or their ETL capabilities. Now, if we were to look at MySQL and look at the Steve1 database and table, we will see that the email and Jenkins are not encrypted at this time. Now I'm going to refresh until the job is completed, and once the job is completed, we're going to see that they are encrypted. While that's running, I'll take advantage and just run into our metadata to show the importance and the comprehensive metadata that we store. So for jobs that we were running yesterday, today, whatever date timestamp, you have the control to be able to look at what metadata that interests you. So if it's email, if it's IP address, if it's the clients or customers or the citizens that you were doing right of erasure, what information do you have, you can select that information both by the regular expression patterns or the names of the people and be able to select date timestamps. And it looks like I missed address and email. So that means there may not have been one there.
Select the jobs.
Okay, so I'm going to do the pattern discovery SQLs because there are several types of catalogs, the deletes, the pattern discoveries, the quick classifications. So now that I select the job, I run the export process, and we're going to get out of the database. This isn't like a Word document. We're actually having a CSV file created from what's stored in MySQL and what's stored in HDFS. And as you can see, you're going to see in a second, this is our job stats that we have created that we're also going to be showing you, that we're processing hundreds of millions to billions of rows in a matter of minutes. because we're using Spark memory, we're able to run the memory underneath Yarn to take advantage of it. Here we were looking at today, and what I just ran were emails and searching for the name Jenkins. We can tell you what column, what rows they were found in, how many total rows, row numbers, and again, what we were doing. We were writing to HDFS in the database. We were rewriting to the database. This information is critical to the ETL team, change data capture team. This can also be exported into your existing metadata tools and shared with and collaborated with other tools that you're using. So it really becomes really crucial and important in that process. So now if we go back to MySQL and refresh.
Yes. Test data too.
We will see this used to be Lisa Jenkins. If we look at test data 2 in the originating data, we have Lisa Jenkins and unencrypted emails, IP addresses, and phone numbers. But here, after we did our discovery run, we just didn't do a simple discovery and say, hey, we found Jenkins for right of erasure. We found emails. We actually went in there during that same time period, and we're scalable to tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of rows to be able to do it on the fly and put it into a new schema and table or an existing one. Now, in reality, the latency and the wall clock time wouldn't be advisable if this were ATM transactions or cash register transactions in bogged down production. So you'd want to do it in a new schema and a new table and then be able to do ETL type processes along the way. So now you've seen how we use metadata, how we can encrypt after the fact or during the fact. Because if we did just a simple straight discovery run, which we can do, we would get the metadata, and then later on we would be able to come in, and I'll show you a quick example. If we just did a simple run for discovery within HDFS as an example. So if I go into, billion rows, million rows, but we'll just go into a simple file within HDFS, and let's just say we searched for IP addresses and emails, and we can search for people's names and information. And also, if files are delimited in different ways, we can change the delimiters. We now know that we're running for emails and IP addresses. Once that is done, that information will be available in the executive summary, which we can drill and then decide if we want to sequester it, put it in encrypted zones, if we want to delete it for right of erasure, or if we want to do encryption. So that becomes a two-step process depending on the methodology that has been selected for your company. So here, if we were to come in and say, okay, we're going to look at emails. Now this is all done with AngularJS D3 open source front end. So now we see that we have emails. What do we want to do with them? Well, we know they need to be either sequestered or encrypted. So we are going to go in to this CSV file sitting in HDFS. We just showed you RDBMS. So I am going to run this process. I'm going to delete the history because HDFS doesn't update, it keeps history. We don't want to keep history on unencrypted data. That's deleting our purpose. So if we want to go in and wait for this to run and we want to look at the file content, while it's running, we can see that our emails are unencrypted, as is the data here. Shortly after, as this job is running, we will be able to see that now this data in email is encrypted. These encrypted keys, we're using standard formats that are suggested that are re-encrypted and stored in hidden areas where the hackers will not get to them. And we store master keys at the file levels, and if requested, we can go down to the column levels and even the field levels. We are using AES 256 encryption, which is known to be one of the strongest and most recommended ones to be used. So when it comes to discovery and remediation of big data, of HDFS, of JDBC, of real-time, of being able to move the information to multiple file types, including S3 buckets, HDFS, and the existing RDDMS, we have fulfilled all that. I am just going to touch on two other quick things, and we're going to get to what we feel is the most important part, and the part that is kept, what I feel is 99.999% of people from going into compliancy. And that's going to be e-commerce and a means to be able to communicate non-encrypted data with encrypted data. If you walk into a CVS, if you walk into an Apple or a storefront and you give your name and it can't be found, that's because your name is now 4SOPSHREYMK. Well, you really can't match that up. And as Dr. Horn has mentioned, we have built a means to take the actual database packets, put them into buffers, put them into proxies, and to be able to then encrypt it with the master key, match it to properly encrypted data that has gone through compliancy, pull that data out, decrypt it, put it from the buffer into the packets, back to your e-commerce screen, and it's business as usual. But what people are missing out there is there are other things. There are object detection. There's facial recognition. There are PDF files. There are Word documents. There are PST files and Outlook files and the hundreds of different file types. And they can't be ignored. Here's an example, and we are using the same thing that Google has been using for years, and we have built in our own algorithms and logic in some cases to make it more powerful than what anybody else is using in OpenCV. Here on the left side we have a C programming book, and we were actually able to match it to a single picture that has 10 different books, and we matched it to the C book. We have altered and allowed individuals with facial recognition. Now, there was a big case in the EU where a student asked for the right of their picture to be taken out of yearbooks and other pictures that were in the school, and they won, and Google lost, and they had to remove URLs of those pictures. The school did, and then Google had to remove URLs about a doctor that lost his license and then regained his license. So there are cases now, and people that are in parking lots, people that are standing at the register at Walgreens, and they're being recorded. These recordings have a right to be missed. Now, this is me, but now we have shortened the distance of the face. We utilize both eyes versus one, and we are tightening up facial recognition. So here we're able to see we got a hit out of a lot of them, and we are using the algorithms of the training images, which have numerous images, to be able to match against pictures. So the higher the number is, the less chance of getting a proper hit. So a 60 isn't a good thing, it's a bad thing, and I only could wish I could look like Elvis, and I don't. So this isn't me, and this isn't going to help the police or Homeland Security, because that's just not who I am. When it comes to running other types of jobs, as we said, and I think I have an example in here of running a pattern job with a PDF file. We can go against Word documents, PDF files, and we utilize TICA. And TICA is able to break down all these semi-structured files and actually break them down into Social Security patterns and state patterns and various types of patterns to find people, to find Social Securities, and other information. This information is all part of CCPA regulations and GDPR regulations. So just going against production data, just going against what you know about is not enough to be compliant. And we go against all the data. I don't care if you've got 30 billion records. You can't randomize and sample that. This isn't data profiling. You have to, by law, go through all the data. And all the data must be accounted for, or you're in violation of CCPA and GDPR. Now, here is the proudest moment that took a real lot of work. And as Dr. Horn said, we had to do data injection. We had to do a lot of buffer working, and we had to do a lot of bits and bytes and hacking in a clean way ourselves to be able to make something like this happen. So by simply changing a MySQL port of 3306 to our proxy port, that packet of database goes into us, and we are able to manipulate things. We are able to convert non-encrypted data to encrypted and vice versa, and get you the results you need. We utilize our comprehensive metadata that, with utilizing our metadata and clicking on the right metadata, which the hackers are going to have a heck of a time figuring out, is going to know exactly where to get the proper encryption key to be able to then go through the process of being able to do the proper e-commerce, WordPress, and website conversions to be able to allow what you're going to see happen. So here we just built a simple, not a website, but a simple Angular screen in our system. Now I am going to show here that we have data in various formats. And we have people like Lisa, that was, I'm sorry?
Customer table.
Customer table. So we have data. So we have Lisa Jenkins, and she has an encrypted email. You know, and if email is part of what Walgreens or Amazon needs, we have a problem. But we know her name is Lisa Jenkins. So if we just came in here and went with last name Jenkins, because we want to get to that email, and then we need to convert that email for validation purposes. So now we're loading. And we were able to go and convert that input data to match that encrypted data that was compliant, and we have her email. And now we can take this unencrypted email as a sample, get rid of her name, which is both unencrypted in both places, but her email is encrypted. But this is her unencrypted email. We have the capability with our proxy to go against an encrypted email with an unencrypted email and still get her phone number, her email, her first and her last name. Now, we can do this currently for MySQL. We are going to be done shortly with MongoDB, Oracle, Postgres, SQL Server, and then we'll be moving on to Teradata DB2 and others. We're doing it in the order of popularity and number of users. So
Steve?
Yes, sir.
This is Dr. Horn. I just wanted to say the thing that really grabbed me about this part of the product is that it's searching data while it's still encrypted without compromising the keys or the data, and allowing the data to be in motion instead of just encrypted data at rest, which is the norm. This also makes it to where you can pull back individual pieces of data from the database without pulling large numbers of unencrypted records across the network and potentially exposing them to hackers or malicious intent.
Thank you for that, John. Now we're going to get to a more sensitive, touchy area for the ad tech world, and an area that companies don't want to be taking thousands and tens of thousands and maybe millions of phone calls for consent, for right of erasure, for what data do you have on me? Who have you sold my data to? How do I communicate with a company? Now, websites are allowed to do it through websites, but if you don't have one, who's going to answer the phone, and how many human ears are you going to have? So what we have devised is the way to make things much smoother and much cleaner. So we have a consent. So we have both a user login for that user to be able to
Password is ABC.
be able to make their requests known to the company, and to communicate their wishes, and all this is encrypted in the background, but the user can see it and change it. And all this information gives a hidden key to the user. So now the user has their own encrypted key. Now that user can come in and he can start. Checkboxes are not legal, but they're a nice means to communicate. So they can say, I'm okay with email, I'm okay with my home address because I want coupons only. Do not sell my info. Now this is legal communication to a company because it is typed. Now I might also, on top of this, have gotten a correspondence from a company, and I might sign it, and I might want to take that document, and I might want to send it back to the company so they have it on their record, and they can send a copy back saying, thank you, we have it, we co-signed it, I consent for use of my email. Now, that is now available for the company to be able to download. So now we have a collaborative bilateral communication via a website that makes things compliant. Now I want to go into the different regulatory systems. Right now we have CCPA, GDPR, USA, Canada, we have Maine, we have Nevada. Yeah, we're going to have to keep building on this. But right now, I want my right of deletion or right of erasure. And I want it against BigDataRevealed. So I now put that information in there. And I say yes. And I say delete my info, court approval shortly. And I save that. Now that is all available to the company also. So now when the company logs into the system, the company can't say they weren't comprised of this information. The company can't say they didn't know about this information. So now I need to log in as a company, and they also have their own secret encrypted key, which they can change at any time they desire by changing their personal information. But right here now, the company is going to log in, and he is going to be able to view ABC or A?
ABC.
ABC. He is going to be able to see all the requests. So one, he can go in and say, okay, I want to see consent documents. There's a document. They can download it. They can look at the notes that are attached to it. So they've got their collaboration and communication. They can go into all the regulatory requirements and requests. So here we have a request, delete my information. What's beautiful about this is let's eliminate the human error. So by clicking on that and hitting next, dragging and dropping over two processes, the first thing I want to do is find the pattern of that citizen. And I don't want to type something wrong. I want to do it exactly as they requested. Well, this is going to be exactly as they requested. We have a comma delimited file of all their personal information. On top of that, if you also want to just get rid of all your emails at the same time and encrypt them, you can do so. And you can hit the next button.
Pick the file first.
Oh, sorry, okay. So, let me go back to,
yeah,
can I get back?
Company.
Start over?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so, let me...
No. Just hit the company button.
Okay. Well, that's nice. So when I make an error, I get my information. I will also encrypt email. Go where, Shashank?
Yeah. Go to file system.
Okay.
Sample data. File 1.
Next.
Check it. Just check the file path. Yeah, okay.
You can change your delimiters. You can use groups of regular expressions. The users can create their own regular expressions if you have internal specialized codes. And we run the process. And that process is going to go out and do the discovery and matching for all those delimited fields. You can do a user at a time. You can do 1,000 users at a time. So if you do happen to get some movie actor or actress or a president that decides he's mad at some company and asks 500,000 people to hit you with a right of erasure or right of usage of their data, it's automated. You'll be able to get that information and you'll be able to accomplish it and prove it with all the technical metadata. Should we go to executive summary or just drop down? So here you can see a chart of what we found for emails, what we found for Stephen, what we found for Meister. And you can't drill in yet until you run the pattern discovery. So we'll go in and run a pattern discovery. We have what's called an outlier discovery for anti-money laundering for parts on an oil rig, where maybe if a part exceeds a standard deviation, that means 10 different parts are going to break. You want to get to that part. So we do have some of that old good data profiling outlier discovery capabilities of the old times built in here, but we're really more about CCPA GDPR. And once the discovery pattern completes, this little round box will go away, and then we're going to have our permission to be able to go in and to accomplish the user's request for their information to be erased or encrypted. Okay, so that job is done. So if I go into... I'm sorry?
Yeah, associate job with the pattern discovery.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. So we attach the latest job to match to the metadata. I now hit the action button. We now can see all our emails. There I am. If you want to drill down to the system source of record to make sure the corresponding and surrounding information, you can. And then at that point, we go to executive summary.
Yep.
And in the executive summary, we now have our choice to get rid of Stephen, Meister, or the emails. So I'm going to get rid of Meister. I can sequester it, encrypt it, or delete it, or consolidate it. Consolidation is more for data scientists to consolidate specific codes and values they want in files so they can do 80% of their real work, 20% investigation, or they can do 80% trying to find the values they need and 20% of their work. So if I want to do an encryption of Citizen Meister, I can just hit that box and I can do a run, and now that person's name is going to be fully encrypted or deleted, whichever you selected, and you're done, and you made no errors. And you put the onus on the citizen to put the proper information in instead of just giving it to some phone taker or have them, put it in an email, and then you have to go through millions and millions of emails, depending on the size. I am about 3 minutes over. Trust in me, you have seen just a portion. We do indirect identifiers, which is probably as difficult, unfortunately, but not as important as e-commerce. We have a control panel for Kerberos and other security and communications, your database communications for your DBAs to set up your DB2, Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres, SQL Server, manage your users, export of your metadata, your proxy application, your regular expressions engine, which we should have shown you, and a slew of other capabilities within the product. The product installs and implements in approximately 1 hour. If you were to use the HDFS Apache 3.1, Hortonworks, or Cloudera, whatever their implementation is, we can install Apache 3.1 or latest with a graphical interface in Ubuntu Linux in about an hour, our application in an hour, and be up and running. We feel we can handle any company into the petabytes in a matter of months. And if you have one of the databases as we come out with them in our proxies, by literally changing a port and an IP address on your properties or even within your code, we should be able to have you up and running and compliant for the small WordPress companies in a matter of hours. We're going to have a small plugin that will allow you to change your properties because of the protectiveness of how the WordPress.com and GoDaddy's work for the shared people that share MySQL and the servers. We understand that, so you'd have to get an AWS instance and run our AMI file, but it's probably 100, 200 a month at most. You will be fully compliant in days, maybe hours. For the more larger clients, Fortune 500s, we feel instead of 5 years, and we do challenge that, 3 to 5 years, we can have you fully compliant in 3 to 5 months. With that, we're going to go to any Q&A people have. I think you have to hit *6 or the Q&A, and then I got to figure out how I get them. It looks like Sunil, click to engage questionnaire. Sunil, do you have a question? I muted you out. Go ahead, Sunil.
Yeah. See, Steven, nice presentation. So if a customer wants to move to cloud, right, AWS, what is the process? Like, can I take BDR Enterprise and Proxy, run everything on the cloud?
You can run BDR on-premise. You can run it as a virtual machine with 32 gig RAM on a laptop. You can run it on Azure, AWS. We are an AMI file on AWS for about 10 months. You pretty much can install and implement it anywhere you want. We are pure 100% Spring Java. So it really doesn't matter where you run our application. You can run it anywhere. And we are fully scalable.
And also, I like another query that if you use BDR, then we don't have to buy other products, right? For CCPA, GDPR, consent capture, to the data discovery, to remediation. We should be able to do all those tasks within this piece of software.
We feel that we are a 360 solution. We do not feel there to date is a regulation or requirement of GDPR or CCPA that we cannot handle. The only time that a user has to intervene is when they sell data or exchange data to a third party. They will have to add who that third party is. So then when we do our search with our regular expression patterns, we can then, when we find the person that wants to know, the citizen, we then know who that data went to, why, when, and even how much. But if the person doesn't put that down, then we obviously don't have access to that. And it's the same concern that when controllers relinquish data to processors, the processors have a legal obligation to take and get all the consents. And if they don't, then they shouldn't be using them, or they need to contact the people and get proper consent. And when people revoke consent, especially 16 years old and under, they are presumed no consent until you get parental consent or get their consent. In the state of Maine, all citizens are assumed no consent. And when somebody requests right of erasure or revokes consent, see, we have the metadata that tells you that. When you ingest new data from third parties, it is your obligation to encrypt, decrypt that data and match against the right of erasure file and the revoke of consent file, and to reject those third-party ingestions unless it's a new sale of that customer. That's an important requirement of third-party processors and controllers.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Do we have any other questions? *6 or click the Q&A. If we don't have any Q&A, at this moment, if you have questions, you can go to our website. You can email us directly. You can call us if you request a demo, a trial. We can do them remotely in a matter of hours. We can do them on site. We do have a team, Dr. Horn, Mr. Sunil Sabat, who's a longtime expert with IBM Informatica and many large companies in this area. So we do have a lot of expertise in this area. We do feel we have the only product on the market that will get you where you need in the time you need it. Unfortunately, I think people underestimate the value and the time and effort it takes. It took us 5.5 years to build and rebuild this application many times till we picked the latest and greatest, utilizing Spring, security and other types of securities. The hackers are very, very intelligent. We think we took a lot, as Dr. Horn said, buffer overload, exposure away, SQL injection away. We put every fail-safe in our proxies. Our proxies can run on-premise, off-premise, on a server, where your database lies. You can have multiple proxies running at one time for multiple databases for the same database. We've really made this as easy as possible, extensible as possible, and scale as possible. I was challenged by a major retailer who I know was having some difficulties in getting large volumes of data, petabytes, run in a timely manner. And it was taking months from what I understand. And we were able to run billions of rows of data in a matter of minutes, matter of hours against Oracle. And we are very transparent, and we put those videos right on YouTube. And that was on 4 or 5 nodes. Everything you saw today was on a single node. So we know if you put us on 50 or 100 nodes, 10, 20, 50, 100 petabytes is not going to be an issue. You do got to look at your latency and importance. And we do have a lot of methodologies for dormant data, for data sits in big data, And we just, beg upon you to don't negate your PDF files, your Word documents, what's on your laptops, what's on your biometrics. You got more than pictures in books. You've got blood types, you've got medical information, you've got MRIs, you've got, just not HIPAA related, but there is so much data that is sitting out there that must be looked at, and indirect identifiers. Somebody that has the only 1957 T-Bird convertible that's a certain color living in a geographic area. That's my dream. But if you have that, that's a violation, because if you can depict somebody out of millions of people, that's as good as a direct identifier. So there's just a lot of things that are missed. But the biggest thing is you can't put yourself out of business. You can't have somebody come to your prescription counter and not be able to get their prescription, but yet how do you become compliant if you can't do that? So you're caught in a catch-22. We've taken that catch-22 away. So there is a way to do it. So there's no more excuses for e-commerce, for websites, for WordPress, for GoDaddy sites, and for volume. Those excuses are gone. So that's where I'd like to leave it. We'd love to work with everybody we can. We will make it affordable to everybody, period. If you're a big company, you can afford it. Obviously, we hope you use it. For small companies that, can't afford certain amounts, we will make it affordable. We want to work with the masses and protect citizens. I have been breached 4 times in 5 months. I know what it's like to lose my identity, and I'm still paying the price for it. So we are advocates. We are pro-citizen, but we are pro-company, because CCPA, a little bit unlike what you're going to experience in GDPR, 6 million people breached could be 50 billion in fines come July. And we don't know what the Attorney General is going to do. And citizens don't have to prove damages, but if they do, then those numbers go up even higher. So, and I personally know in my prediction of talking to thousands of companies, I honestly don't feel there's one that can meet the challenge of being more than 10% compliant today. And if they are, I would love to audit them. So that's the sad reality. And people are now getting a little more panicky, but we do have a solution that will get them compliant in time. So if anyone else has anything to add, John, Sunil, anybody? If not, I will make the video available. Don, anything? Okay then. I thank everybody for joining us. I wish everybody luck, and I hope to hear from anybody that we can help. This will now conclude the meeting.